Good morning, folks. I want to talk a minute this morning about the heart of your control system on a control line model airplane. Maybe a better analogy would be to call it the brain, because the Bellcrank in a control line model airplane is the brain of the control system. Your lead outs here, of course, run to the end of the wing where they hook onto the cables that are hooked onto the handle which you hold in your hand. The pivoting of this Bellcrank moves the push rod, which is attached in one of these three holes here. The Bellcrank swivels from this hole. There's a bushing that goes in here that you have to put in, and then there's a post that this sits on. Now, it's extremely important that this piece of hardware work. Many airplanes have met their fate by having this thing fail. And your push rod attaches here, it runs back to your flaps in your elevator, or your elevator only if you're using a non-flap plane. That's what makes the plane go up and down. This is how you control the airplane. This piece of hardware is extremely important. If you use a cheap one, or if you don't bush it right with the cables, then you're just asking for trouble. This particular Bellcrank that you're looking at came from Eric Rule at RSM Distribution, and it's made of carbon fiber. It's an eighth of an inch thick. It's 4 inches in length. Now, what I wanted to show you, but before I do that, let me show you. This is also another Bellcrank that I got from Eric at RSM. This is a SIG nylon Bellcrank. It's the same, serves the same function, only it's a 3 inch instead of a 4 inch. And the bushings in here is what I want to point out. This is what is so extremely important, but let me just do it with a carbon fiber. As you can see, there are some brass bushings in here where the lead outs go through. In addition, I have also run my lead out wire, which is .027 gauge. Some people use .027, some use .036. This is 2.7. I found that to be adequate. But what I do is I buy some copper tubing. This is 1/16 inch copper tubing. I cut it to about 1 1/4 inches in length, and I put it in my vise to hold it with it sticking up. And I take a butane torch and I heat it till it's just red hot. That makes it easy to work with. It makes it soft and supple. So you can take your lead out wire and you can run that through that little piece of tubing, stick it through the bushing in the Bellcrank, and then what I do, you got a straight piece of copper tubing like that. I take an 1/8 inch dowel or a little screwdriver like this, put it underneath there, bend it so that gives you some flexibility here. It's not just crimped against the Bellcrank, and then bring the tag in over like that, which I will wrap with copper wire. These bushings, I can't explain how important they are. A lot of your foreign-made airplanes that come in here already built don't do this. And it's usually a cheap piece of metal or Bellcrank made out of metal, and you've just got the wire sticking through there, and eventually that's going to fail. This wire, because of the pull of the airplane, is going to cut through that Bellcrank, that hole, and you're going to have a massive failure. This bushing that you see, plus there's two bushings. The bushing that Eric put in here, the brass bushing in the hole, and then the bushing that I did with the copper tubing. And that allows for free movement, it gives it some lubrication of some sort, and keeps it from cutting through that Bellcrank and having a massive failure. So it's very important. Even the SIG Bellcranks that I buy from Eric come bushed like that. He bushes the holes so that they don't cut through the nylon. It's extremely important. Remember, this is the brains of the airplane. This is the brains of the control system, just like the human brain. If the human brain has a stroke, then nothing else works. Your legs, your mouth, your arms, it could affect a lot of things. If this thing has a stroke, you're going to crash your airplane. So, the other thing I wanted to show was, people have asked me before the best way to attach these lead outs. Well, I use a wrap, and I use it says 28 gauge copper wire, and I usually cut off a length about 18 inches long, and just take my wire cutters and cut me a little piece like that. And once I get this through the bushing hole in the Bellcrank and I bring the tag in over, I just simply take the copper wire and I just start to wrap. You just wrap this around. And you do a few wraps to get it going, and then you take your needle nose pliers and you put it there and you kind of push it back like that to tighten it up. And you go around and around, come out about, oh, I don't know, inch I guess, and then you fold this tag in back over like this and you wrap it also. Once that's done, you take a piece of heat shrink tubing like I've got here, and you slide it over the wire up to here, and then take your heat gun or lighter or whatever you got and shrink it so you end up with a connection like that. That's not going to go anywhere. Another thing some people do, I don't do it, but you can, is after you do your wrap, before you slide your heat shrink tubing up, take some CA glue and put on there if you want a little bit more protection. But I found just the wrap and putting this heat shrink is perfect. It works well. But the main thing is make sure that the airplanes that you're getting, if you're buying an ARF that comes out of China, I doubt very seriously whether these bushings are going to be on there, the lead outs will be bushed with the copper tubing. I do it on all the ARFs that I put out, and all my personal models are bushed both on the lead out wire itself and in the Bellcrank. So, important point, just wanted to bring that out. Short video to show you the importance of a Bellcrank and the importance of bushing a Bellcrank.